name is Craig Roggow, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this presentation today. We are going to be discussing best practice companies in mastering leadership. Now, before I get started, let me just give you a little idea of what you can expect from this video. First of all, this video is meant to hit the high points, if you will, or cruise across the treetops on this subject. And by doing so, I will be taking a look at two separate companies and then giving you some of the reasons and some of the ways that they've established leadership in their organizations. And then I will compare and contrast those two. And then in closing, I'll actually go through what we may do as leaders of our organization to instill leadership qualities throughout. So with that in mind, let's get started. Again, best practice companies in mastering leadership. Now this next slide, and I will be interjecting slides as I go through this video to give you my talking points. And in doing that, this next slide here, multimedia formats, gives you an outline of this entire case study that I've done. And by going to the blog where I've been published, you'd be able to take a look at the actual copy, the full project, and should you want to, you could even review this video again. And then you would also be able to download the PowerPoint presentation. So if you take a look at 1, 2, and 3, that should be pretty self-explanatory. But with that in mind, we will move forward and get into the subject matter. So let's go over a bit of an introduction here. Now, if we take a look at leadership, we realize that the term itself is somewhat abstract. And in fact, there's many different definitions of leadership, and so as we discuss leadership, you'll probably have your own connotations of what it means to you or what it has meant to you as you've been involved in various organizations, or possibly even your own style of leadership. So we don't want to make more of it or less of it, but we want to be able to define some of the criteria that makes leadership so important today within organizations. So leadership is an integral component of any organization, either in the for-profit or the non-profit sector. And if we take a look, in essence, leadership influences all aspects of a company, specifically management, recruitment, administration, accounting, and marketing, as well as many of the other departments too. So highlighting again the important parts of this particular study, we find that Google and Coca-Cola, which are going to be the two companies that we evaluate and analyze, are really truly some of the premier best practice companies within leadership. The standards of leadership at Coca-Cola and Google have been influential in steering these companies towards the highest echelons of corporate success, not only in the United States but in the world as well. Now, ineffective leadership, however, can easily cause a company to enter into liquidation. And if we take a look at the objectives of this project, specifically, this is what I'd like you to be able to take away. You'll be able to analyze and explain what these best practice companies do within mastering leadership, and specifically we're talking about Coca-Cola and Google. You'll be able to define the similarities between those two companies, describe the major differences between them, and critique both Coca-Cola and Google's best practices. And then lastly, again, as the leader of your organization or as you evaluate leaders in your organization, you'd be able to define some best practices that you may want to be able to use as well. All right, best practice company Coca-Cola. Now if we take a look at the company itself, we see that Coca-Cola reshuffles its leadership system frequently. This facilitates changes at all levels of Coca-Cola, and it has enabled them to enjoy premier status in the world as far as their particular industry. Now specifically, if we look at some of the high points that I've uncovered in my study, we see that Coca-Cola's reputation is founded on strong leadership qualities. So while they have a lot of other attributes, we find that literally leadership has been an integral part of their actual fiber of that company and what has enabled it to survive as long as it has. The senior leaders are dynamic, integrity is also a crucial virtue among the leaders, and then the board of directors are highly professional. Whereas in some organizations you find that they may be nothing more than just placeholders. That's definitely not the case with Coca-Cola. Now let's take a look at Google, best practice company Google. And we see that the leaders of Google employ numerous motivational tactics. Now, we're kind of looking at the old versus the new here. But for instance, all employees in Google are highly paid. There's also numerous incentives such as bonuses and promotions. Consequently, the company is ranked among the globe's best employers. And we find that the leadership system of Google promotes talent development within and is achieved through on-the-job training. Such policies definitely enhance the skills of the employees. Now, in summary, again, my analysis has shown that Google, being a technology firm, has definitely an excellent share, and we all know this, in the global market, specifically within the technology sector. Leaders delegate numerous responsibilities to employees. The leaders are famed for promoting innovativeness, and the leadership promotes teamwork. Now, let's take a look at the similarities before we look at the differences, but let's look at the similarities between Coca-Cola and Google. Leaders in both organizations delegate responsibilities. We've seen that, and probably if you think about those two companies, that will bear out. Both companies have dynamic leaders. Leaders in these companies have invested in talent development. Now, they do that a bit differently, as we'll see in a minute, but they definitely invest in themselves. Diversity is a notable component of the workforce in both organizations. Now let's take a look briefly at the differences between Coca-Cola and Google. We find that distinct leader-follower relationships. So they have a difference in how they interact with the employee versus how the management interacts as well. Now, the leadership system at Coca-Cola Company, it really doesn't promote teamwork. They promote more of autonomy. They promote more of individualism. The teamwork is a crucial aspect of operations, however, at Google. Now, we find that Google really does promote teamwork. Distinct approaches to innovativeness may differ, but they both have a way of instilling that leadership quality, even though their style of delivery is a bit different. Now, let's take a look and let's critique, if you will, the best practices of both companies. Let's look at the good and the bad. Both companies are brilliant models for best practice leadership, for sure, no doubt about that. And they have both mastered their style, if you will, of leadership. Now, the leadership practices in the two companies have bolstered human resource efficiency, no doubt about that. They've excelled where only a few companies would ever get to their level of success. And they've done that, again, as we've identified here, through leadership development and so forth. Leaders in Google provide the followers with extensive autonomy. I touched on this briefly before. A little bit different at Coca-Cola. Such autonomy, however, though, it requires control. You can't just have everybody running their own show. Otherwise, you'll be fragmented and your direction will be hampered. Leaders at Coca-Cola must interact with their followers. What we find that they've got the old style, the hierarchy corporate structure in place, and really there is not much interaction between the top echelon and the lower level employee, and they could probably benefit by integrating a cooperativeness and allowing the employee to actually contribute to some of the decisions. So employees must have adequate platforms communicating with the leaders. Without that platform and without the ability to do that, more than likely there will be adverse effects as even Coca-Cola moves forward. And I touched on this, but the last point again is that the employees at Coca-Cola definitely should be involved in the decision making to some extent. Okay, so if we took a look at implementing these best practices in our organization, or you as the CEO watching this video, here are some things that one might keep in mind. Motivation of employees would be an essential aspect of this emphasis called leadership. Organizational culture would be an essential aspect of leadership as well. So in other words, the organization itself must have some kind of a culture that promotes leadership and the desire for those within the company to keep propelling forward and to lead. Integrity would immensely enhance the efficiency of all leaders. Obviously, if you have a bunch of crooks in place, that's probably going to be detrimental overall. in the success of the company. And these two companies definitely have people that have exuded quality and also have been very, I guess, focused on integrity within and throughout the organization itself. And specifically, and we're not going to get into the depth here, but the transformational style of leadership should be encouraged. And so I give you that kind of last note there to go back and do some more research yourself on the different styles of leadership. But definitely transformational leadership would be an important style to keep in mind. In conclusion, we see that again, the thesis or the result of my research and analysis here is that the standard of leadership at Coca-Cola and Google have been influential in steering these companies towards the highest echelon, again, of the corporate success that they've had. And the board of directors, again, have been highly professional within Coca-Cola. This has given them, I guess, direction and leadership, although there hasn't been a lot of interaction from the top down. Whereas the leaders of Google employ numerous motivational tactics and encourage their employees to work together as teams, and this has also been, to a large extent, why they have seen the success that they have. So again, two bit different approaches to leadership, but they've both been effective. Now, we realize that leadership is integral for companies to realize success, and the more leadership and the more direction there are, or that there is, enables a company to be more focused and move forward meeting its goals. So I hope you've enjoyed just my analysis and case study of leadership and how that gets mastered into premier companies that we've taken a look at. This next slide here simply draws you back again to the website publishing of this particular project and these case studies. And for a full report of this in the video, again, in the PowerPoint presentations, go back to the actual website itself, which is mergerandacquisitionstrategies.org/best practice companies in mastering leadership. And I also mentioned, or did not mention previously, but you'd be able to download this video also at YouTube by just simply typing in best practice companies in mastering leadership, Craig Roggow, and you'd find me there in YouTube. If you take a look at the next slide, the references here, you can take a look at my academic credited resources and go into more depth within leadership, if you will, and find maybe some more information regarding the subject matter. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this video presentation. I hope that there's been some tidbits and some gems for you to take away as far as mastering leadership for yourself. And again, I look forward to speaking with you next time. But until then, thank you again. Bye for now.